So our next speakers are from the Amazon Web Services. So our first speaker is Ralph Severini, who's a global leader in insurance at Amazon Web Services, a multifaceted, innovative leader and technology professional that has contributed to business growth and execution, strategy and planning, product development, and all level of business development, sales, marketing, and partnerships and alliances for several publicly traded companies. Driven to build profitable businesses through the enterprise application of technology and its associated mapping to line of business processes, and end user manager architecting data centers, system and storage architectures, real-time databases, content management and search, and business systems, including risk, ECM, and CRM. So Ralph, off to your team.
Hey, thanks, boss. I guess ciao, everyone, and welcome to this discussion on sensors and IoT and data and telematics. I'm Ralph Severini, representing AWS, which, as Vlas just said, and I think most people know, is part of Amazon. I'm part of our global financial services group, which includes capital markets, banking, payments, and insurance. I specifically work on insurance. However, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about me later when I take over. As with me here today only for 30 minutes is Ritu Kama, and she'll introduce herself, and she's from our IoT group. And then Ritu is going to lead us through some of her and AWS's work when it comes to IoT and sensors. And the two of us work closely together on some things, so I'm sure she's going to share some of that. And then I'll take over again to review some additional material because she has to leave. So Ritu, I think if you can jump on the screen and do your screen share, you can take over, introduce yourself, and get into the topic which we're all interested in.
Perfect. Thanks, Ralph. And thank you for the introduction. Very happy to be here, and thanks to everybody for the time today. I'm going to start sharing my screen, so when you can see it, let me know. In addition to that, I wanted to share a little bit about how we're looking at IoT for insurance, what AWS is doing in the space, share some of the industry trends, and then I'll turn it back to Ralph. Apologies, I can only be here for the first 30 minutes, but Ralph will lead the rest of the session, and then we'll go from there. In terms of my introduction, my name is Ritu Kama. I joined AWS about 2.5 years ago, worked very closely with Ralph, and I lead the worldwide IoT go-to-market strategy and business development here at AWS. And we spend quite a bit of time thinking about how IoT can enable business outcomes for customers in the different industries, including insurance. And that's what I'll be sharing in the first 30 minutes with the team here. With that, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
We can.
Great. So in the interest of time, I will move forward, and then I'll try to see if we have a few minutes at the end for questions. So with that, as everybody knows, Amazon started with books in 1994. Of course, we are now in a number of different businesses, and I selected some of these pictures very specifically because all of these businesses are possible because there's some or the other component of IoT in there. So as you can see on the right here, the Amazon Go store, which is the retail store where you can basically walk in, pick up whatever you need to pick up from the shelf and just walk out without having to check out specifically. That's possible because a number of technologies, including computer vision, IoT, machine learning, AI, and a number of other things that we do here at AWS. If you look here in the middle of our fulfillment center, the robotic arms that are moving the packages and selecting and shipping packages for the customers, there's a significant amount of IoT in there as well. So we make sure that we are leveraging the innovation and work that the AWS teams are doing in our own businesses. And because of the scale of Amazon, we know that if those technologies and services are working for our own businesses, we know that they're going to be working for our customers because, we've tested them at scale. We know what are some of the customer challenges. and what do we need to do to ensure that the customers have the broadest and the widest set of capabilities needed to get their businesses accelerated with IoT. So just as at the very high level, the kinds of trends we're seeing in the insurance industry, um, I'm just going to go left to right. Of course, data is an enabler. Without the data, you can't possibly think of transforming a business. So as with every industry, collecting the data, not just that you traditionally collect, but also enabling additional sensors, cameras, other types of edge devices to collect data points so you can make better decisions and get additional insights of what really is occurring in the real world is extremely important. All of that data, of course, is going to come to a central place, which is what is powering some of the data lake conversation. And the scale of cloud really makes it very easy and possible with security, with scale, with auto manageability that you get in the cloud. There's lots of different capabilities that are now possible by having some of this data end up in the cloud and enabling the downstream businesses and applications on top of that. Smart physical systems, again, this goes without saying. Lots of different use cases here that touch the insurance industry. Security and surveillance is obviously top of mind, but also, water leak detection, any other kind of damage to the property or the thing that is being insured, assessing risk, having real-time telemetry and real-time data and feeds that are enabling your insights around what is really occurring on the ground is extremely important. The need for real time is critical, not as much as from the point of view of having a real time assessment of the equipment that's being insured, but more from the point of view of, are there things that can be done to improve the health of the property or health of the system that's being insured, but also enabling insights and intelligence so that your future business can actually take advantage of that data. So a lot of goodness there from sensorizing the physical systems, enabling the insights from the physical systems, and then driving real-time insights into the
Rita,
actual business.
a quick question here, right?
Yeah.
So I from kind of like my experience that everyone understands that IoT is great, and then it provides a lot of ability to monitor things, but then there's always the sort of like a trade-off, right? So let's say with the drugs is that you can put sensors, so you can put everything IoT related on the big shipment containers, but when it comes to kind of shipping it directly to the customer, then it becomes hard to install, a sensor or any kind of tracking device on something that you may be making $1 on, right? So how do you have any kind of strategy or any kind of examples where people trying to balance this payoff versus the benefits that IoT brings on the smaller scale when price is actually an option, and maybe you need to put a IoT on something that is not as valuable or as big as a whole system.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We have those types of conversations all the time. Of course, there's always a balance between what does it cost to sensorize everything and is that cost worth it, right? And so I think it really depends on what's the business outcome that we're trying to deliver. And we always start and work backwards from that instead, rather than a solution first approach or a technology first approach. So doing technology for the sake of technology is obviously not going to lead to business outcomes and will be a solution looking for a business problem versus vice versa, right? And so we always have these discussions with customers, just at a very very simple level. It doesn't make sense to put sensors on every little thing that you have in the building or in the on the shipment or whatever you're insuring. So usually sensors make sense when there is high value assets, where the cost of replacing or cost to repair the damage is higher or significant, and not just the cost of repair but also the downtime, if that particular shipment is lost or that particular asset is non-functional and it causes unplanned downtime for the business. That's the thing that we're trying to prevent. And so always there is a balance between what's the cost to replace or prevent the downtime versus putting the sensors. Having said that, the technology from an IoT standpoint has evolved significantly, and so the cost component has also gone down. And you can find really inexpensive sensors and different communication technologies, again, depending on the use case as well as depending on what's the scope. But you do have options even on the low cost range, if that makes sense for the business, of course.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Awesome. And then just continuing on, and also I'm just trying to keep the interest of time in mind. Customer experience is extremely important. Digital experience or digitized experiences are becoming more and more important. So virtual assistants, enabling applications on the mobile phone, making it very, very easy for customers to interact with the business and providing maybe voice integration, phone camera integration. These types of things are becoming more and increasingly important. And automation also goes without saying. Again, it's the purpose for doing that would be to reduce costs for the business, but then making as many processes that are manual automated as possible. All of that is possible with a number of different technologies, not just IoT. So IoT is one part of it, but of course, data collection, data lakes, AI, machine learning, voice, augmented reality, and computer vision all comes together to enable some of these business applications. Um, there was a survey done, and we know this from the industry and the amount of interest we're seeing is that 94% of the businesses will be implementing IoT in some form in this year. But that does but then what does IoT mean, right? And nobody just buys IoT. Yeah, what they're looking for is a business outcome. IoT is just enabling that business outcome. At Amazon, we have this approach of working backwards. So we always, before we start any engagement with the customer, we always start with, if you can know the state of everything and you could reason on top of that data, what business problem would you solve, right? Start from the business problem, and then the solution and the technology will always follow. And then when we think about business outcomes, the business outcomes with IoT and related technologies, obviously creating new sources of revenue, opening up new business models. If you were able to triangulate data from different dimensions, and I think Ralph is going to probably touch on this a little bit in his session, is that we have the data coming in terms of the telemetry of from the sensors that we have put in place in the business, but just having disparate sources of telemetry is probably not going to be the meaningful, not going to give you the meaningful result. It's the triangulation of that data with other data that you may already be collecting, or third-party data that you may be getting, such as the weather data, such as some other data that may be relevant for that business application. So combining the data, improving those insights, triangulating so that you can predict the points of failure, predict the risk a little bit better, have different viewpoints and in different dimensions of data. All of that leads to then reducing the cost, decreasing the claims, having a sense of real time situation. And then that leads to, of course, customer loyalty, customer retention, improved customer experiences. So all of these things are a little bit connected. Again, a business may prioritize one dimension first and say, our goal is to reduce the cost of underwriting a particular insurance contract, or reducing the cost of processing the claims. And we can certainly start in that dimension, but then with this enablement of the cloud and IoT and the related services around AI and ML leads to additional business outcomes, and then we can move to the other dimensions. Very quickly, what does AWS have in the space? And so IoT, we understand, is fairly complex and multidimensional. There's obviously devices, sensors, you have to figure out for connectivity and the infrastructure needed for enabling sensors on thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of devices, enabling analytics and insights on top of that data, having applications, business applications enabled, and most importantly, doing business in a different way, right? So change management is also, and shifting of the culture is also part of this. Um, what we have done from an AWS perspective is that we have managed services available from AWS that operate at three different layers. There's services that operate at the edge. So whether these are microcontroller type sensors, small sensors that can go on different things, or even edge gateways or edge hardware that is fairly powerful and fairly complex. So we have device services that operate at the edge. We have control services that are purposefully designed to control, manage, and secure those devices that our businesses and our customers are scaling. And then finally, the services that operate at the data layer. So now that we have these devices connecting and sending data, how do I manage that data? How do I extract value from the data? So this is our complete platform for IoT and machine learning. On the left are our IoT services. So the device software layer has, I'll just highlight a couple of services. So free RTOS or free RTOS is a real-time operating system that goes on a microcontroller type devices, so that these devices are automatically designed to integrate with AWS and have the security profile or the security framework extended, so we don't have a challenge from a cybersecurity standpoint down the road. We have IoT Greengrass, which is a service which basically extends the power of the cloud down to the edge, and you can run local actions, local decisioning, local machine learning inferencing within the Greengrass framework on the edge. We have control and connectivity services, and these are the services that have that manage that basically is a control plane for the devices. So how devices connect to the cloud. Not every device, just because it exists, should be allowed to connect. So how do you register the devices? How do you manage the entire device lifecycle? And how do you manage and control these devices at scale? And then the analytics services around understanding the data. uh, IoT data is typically fairly noisy. So how do you cleanse the data? How do you canonical the data? How do you derive value from that data? So we have quite a number of services in that space that are fairly highly rated in the industry. And then all of these services work seamlessly with our machine learning and AI services. So whether they are core foundational services like SageMaker, where you can develop machine learning models in the popular frameworks like PyTorch or MXNet or TensorFlow. You can write your own algorithms. And then we also have applied AI services like Amazon Forecast that'll allow you to forecast or predict what can potentially happen based on the data, or recognition video uh, for computer vision and those types of workloads. And so quite a number of AI services. The good news about this flywheel is you can develop, you can ingest the data at scale through millions of devices, get the data in the cloud, then use our AI and machine learning services to understand what's really occurring and build a predictable models on top of that data. And then you can compress the models down and deploy it on Greengrass, so the models can actually run in the edge without having to really necessarily connect to the cloud. And so this allows our customers to continue to improvise on the models and continue to deliver more and more capability at the edge. So you can even prevent or predict failure points in the entire business. Lots of customers in a lot of sectors. We also have a number of partners that we have worked tirelessly to build from the edge point of view. So OEM, ODMs have seamless integration with AWS, silicon providers, gateway providers. So depending on the application and the use case, we can be recommending or we can building a scenario where we work with one of these partners to have the edge figured out and the connectivity figured out. We have network partners from cellular standpoint as well as other types of network. LoRa is fairly popular or becoming popular as well. So connectivity partners and network partners, as well as system integrators and SaaS application providers. So if you have lots of partners are also developing full-blown application stacks upon AWS IoT to enable end use cases and end business applications that run on top of AWS. Um, just very, very quickly, I'll just dive a little bit into some of the use cases. So from a connectivity, this is an example of a building or a commercial property insurance, for example, or home insurance. A lot of automation that is enabled with IoT. We do know that from working with the customers that there are some common failure points when it comes to building and home insurance and certain things that the insurers need to look at. So, of course, automation can be enabled on top of that from a security standpoint, from water damage, fire damage, smoke damage, and things like that. If we're talking about security and monitoring, a lot of surveillance applications in the space, audio and image recognition is a key trend, computer vision and machine learning at the edge, having surveillance applications so you can deliver capability pretty much on any form factor, whether it's in the cloud or on the edge and having local decisioning. So you're not really dependent on the connectivity to the cloud. You can actually deliver use cases right at the edge. And again, this is what I was trying to tell you is that from IoT perspective, our goal would be to enable landing that data in the cloud so you can train your machine learning models in the cloud and then deploy them at the edge or within the on-premise environment for inferencing. So, and these models can run without having direct cloud connection. Um, Continuing to move on, so voice-enabled experiences. Of course, Alexa is our, our solution around voice. We did a survey again, is like as to how many people in the world understand Alexa, and we found out that 90%, 95% of the population that was surveyed understands Alexa or at least has heard about Alexa. So Alexa is fairly well recognized in the industry. Um, and from a voice experiences perspective, we have enabled Alexa for Business. So you don't have to really use Alexa the way Amazon ships Alexa with the Echo and other devices. You can actually totally customize Alexa to your business. So you don't have to use the same wake word or you have to use the same skills. You can actually customize Alexa skills to pretty much anything you want and then use some of those voice skills to enable additional experiences for your customers in the business. And Alexa and IoT works very closely together. So we work very closely with the Alexa team, and we have Alexa for IoT Kit that allows you to quickly put both the voice as well as IoT into the applications that you are trying to enable and get those additional data points from your devices. Um, so again, Alexa and IoT, this is a perfect example. Let me keep moving on. Some of the applications for this. So we worked with Hive to build out a leak detection system, which is basically this Hive leak detecting kit that you can install. The customer wanted to get this product accelerated in the market fairly quickly. So we worked on integrating the Hive leak detector with Amazon FreeRTOS, which is actually now just FreeRTOS, and enable getting the data fairly quickly, not have to worry about building this from scratch. A lot of this capability is available out of the box to get a solution like this out the door. Another example is again in the building management space. So Entrata has building management software or property management software on the cloud, and they integrate with IoT to get the data from all of the IoT devices that are spread across multiple buildings, multiple units, and enable the triangulation of that data across the different dimensions to provide that single pane of glass for the end customer and provide that information so they can understand what's exactly happening within the building from a security and safety standpoint, from the building health standpoint, as well as from the expensive equipment that's in the building standpoint. So you can understand what needs to be maintained, if there's any work order that needs to be issued, really providing that whole property management view on top of the building. Um, there's a couple more examples, but at this point, I think given the time, I want to open it up for a couple more minutes before I have to drop. If there's any questions on this, or if I can answer any other questions that you may have around AWS and AWS IoT.
Yeah. So a quick question from Gerardo. The market entry angle in this case is the sale of data to insurance company or proceed with a Tesla style in-house solution. So I would say that from the insurance company standpoint, what do you see is the biggest value for all of those IoT embedments?
I can provide my answer, but I think Ralph, you may have a better insight into this. My from my point of view, the biggest value is what I spoke about, which is the triangulation of data, right? Putting sensors on different things is just a means to an end. Like you can be collecting the data points from lots of different dimensions, but how do those data points all come together to provide a better sense of the what's really occurring, and how can we reduce the cost first from an underwriting standpoint, and then from a from a claim management or a claim processing standpoint, and then when we're going back to reinsure the property, what sort of usually it involves site visits and people going in, going through a checklist. Could there be ways to automate some of that by having instrumentation in the business, so some of that can be actually be automated. So those are some of the things that I've heard or I've seen customers ask for. They're not necessarily that interested in, can I just instrument everything and put sensors everywhere? It's more around, how can I augment my business from additional data points and where that makes sense, right? And especially from a triangulation standpoint, how can I get more insights from the business? But Ralph, do you want to answer it a little differently?
I was just going to say I'll probably get into that a little bit. I was going to show them examples at some point around data exchange.
Yeah,
So
that makes a lot of
Awesome.
sense.
Awesome.
yeah,
Thanks so much. And then maybe a question from more of the IoT standpoint. So what would you see is the biggest sort of use case that your customers are asking? What do you think is the biggest driver for sort of this IoT implementation? Maybe you mentioned the flow, you mentioned the connection to the property's health. So what have you seen has the most interest and most impact that people are asking for?
Yeah, I think the very, very first thing that customers want to do is having that single pane of glass, right? Everyone is experimenting in this space, so I wouldn't want to say that, we've come to a point where there is a known, um, you know, golden use case or a known golden end state that the customers want to get to. So this is a journey, and most of the customers are starting with having a single pane of glass, uh, getting the data flowing into the cloud from an IoT standpoint, marrying that data with other data that they have, and then enabling business applications on top of that. Where it goes from there, I think is an evolution, um, but the starting point is the single pane of glass, and it's usually a journey for the customers.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I will stop sharing. Thanks for the time today. Happy to take follow-on questions from this session in another way, maybe email or other ways how we're collecting. But thanks for the time today. I'll turn it to Ralph to take it from here.
thanks, Ritu. Really nice. Thanks again.
Thank you.
So with that, I'm going to try to share my screen. Can you, Blas, can you see my screen?
Yes, new data stream, telematics, and sensors.
Perfect. Let's see if we can open this up. So
Yep,
now you,
all good.
yeah, full screen. So yeah, and I hope that was good. I will follow on some areas that she left off on, particularly maybe some telematics and automotive and a couple of other things. But just to tell you a little bit more about myself, I'm more from the insurance side with a lot of technology. Ritu is definitely on the IoT group within AWS, which is a large group, and she's helping us on the insurance side. So my responsibility is for global insurance partnerships and alliances, both our software vendors and systems integrators. I joined about 18 months ago, but maybe like a lot of you on the call, I've had a long history in insurance and financial services, and in the case of insurance, as a commercial underwriter and broker. So one interesting thing about me is that for the past decade, I've traveled a lot extensively around the world for business. And my last international trip, which was the end of last February, started in Israel. Then I went to Munich and I followed that by Zurich. From there, I took the train to Milano, and the day after I left, Italy essentially closed down. So Milan was my last international city that I've been to since COVID, and I know Italy has had a rough time of it. So I hope you're all on the path to get vaccinated in the near future, sometime in the near future. So hopefully I can return and travel again and get some decent food. How's that? Let's go to the next slide. Well, Ritu kind of introduced this already. Normally I work out of New York, and this is our 12-story financial services industry world headquarters across from the Empire State Building on 34th Street. But since COVID, I moved to my other home in Park City, Utah, which is quite a distance. It's about 3,500 kilometers, and it's in a ski area.
I live in Salt Lake, so I very much know that.
Oh my goodness. I didn't know that. So you're pretty close, but the U.S. is a big country in terms of mileage, as opposed to Italy, which I've been through, and you can get through faster, at least cross country. So this is a 12-story building, but here's where I'm at right now, looking more or less out at the mountains and ski resorts. So COVID has really changed things in all ways. I do miss getting back and traveling, and look forward to getting back to Milan because we have a big office there with a lot going on. So, Ritu just went through some of the sensor areas and IoT around, a little bit more around property insurance. I was going to take you, or this group, a little bit more through the insurance aspects, and we were talking about data. This is a lot about data because it generates so much, whether you're in whether it's IoT, sensors, telematics, and I'll describe some things that we're doing with our data exchange. And then I wanted to touch on, I wanted to invite someone who's specifically focused on automotive. There's actually a group that's doing that, but they were not available. So I'm going to show a few slides. And then my other interests, both in terms of insurance and IoT and data, is in the area of agriculture and hopefully getting better ways to feed and finance the world of food. And then I'll touch base maybe if we have time on life and health. I want to leave a little bit of time, certainly for questions in all of this, if that makes sense. So let's move on. And this is something we call this two pizza, but it all started back in 2001 when the leaders of Amazon.com were faced with a kind of a well-structured but monolithic architecture. And so they kind of started down the path of breaking this monolith into a group of, what's now known as microservices and APIs, where the services discovery across the organization became critical. So, and all of those services are developed, deployed, and supported by what we here at Amazon and AWS are known as two-pizza teams. So, meaning that we want to get no bigger than being able to consume 2 pizzas. Now, maybe if you're from New York, that could be a small pizza or an extra large pizza. We haven't decided on that, but suffice it to say that that was the core idea born early on in our history at AWS. So the takeaway here is that these small, multidisciplinary 2 pizza teams perform not only development, but they are responsible for deployment and support. And essentially, this is our approach to innovation and development within our culture. So what has that resulted in? This is a bit of an eye chart, so really don't attempt to read it. But let's fast forward to 2021, and now there are over 175 AWS services that we offer, and that keeps growing. And if you look back about 3 years ago, there were only about 100. So if you do the math, you can see that we're, these kinds of services are growing dramatically. When I was a quality award examiner here in the US, we call that the Baldrige Award. We call this continuous improvement. And we like to say here at AWS that 90% of our services were driven directly out of customer input. And maybe the other 10% we infer from what our customers want. But certainly all these services are not relevant to insurance. Bottom line here is to think about these maybe as Lego blocks. So here's what we're seeing right now in insurance, and it's particularly accelerating the potential for sensors and IoT. And that's the need to get a better understanding of the risks without necessarily being in maybe direct contact with the insurance customer, whether it's personal auto or life insurance or commercial. So because of COVID, you can't really ask policyholders or potential policyholders maybe to go to their favorite lab or clinic for a blood draw, as an example, so they can complete their life insurance application. And I know when I was an underwriter, I spent some time with loss control, and I used to go out to construction sites and manufacturing companies kind of to get a firsthand view of these big risks. And that's not likely to happen right now. So, sensors, cameras are all other ways to remotely look at your risk and potentially gather that information. Certainly some of this can be substituted, but each of these micro devices develops relevant information. And in turn, that leads to more data that needs to be analyzed and reviewed, and we're going to talk about that. We like to talk about this from the point of a data lake, and that's kind of how we describe it at AWS. So I'm going to kind of walk you through a little bit of our view of this data lake. So you saw all that information that Ritu was bringing forward from the collection, the devices, the movement of that information. And so, back when Jeff Bezos filled orders in his garage and drove packages to the post office himself, I guess crunching the numbers on costs, inventory, forecasting demand was pretty simple. But fast forward again, 25 years, Amazon's retail business now has about 175 fulfillment centers with tens of thousands, probably well over 500,000 full-time associates, people, shipping millions of items per day. And Amazon's worldwide financial operations team has this incredible task of tracking data. And here you got to think petabytes of data. And at Amazon scale, miscalculated metric, like a cost per unit or delayed data can have, millions of dollars of impact. So our teams are constantly looking for ways to get more accurate data and get it faster. So that's why in 2019, they had this idea, build a data lake that can support one of the largest logistics networks on the planet. And this became internally known as the Galaxy Data Lake. And now all the various teams are working on moving their data into it. So let's move on to this next slide, and then we'll get into some of the auto area. Actually, I'll take you through some examples as well. So this massive amount of data is being generated and managed from a variety of sources, and that's what we see here in this kind of middle section: machine learning, Internet of Things, data management, event processing, and data protection. So in the context of insurance, this data comes from sensors and insurance applications. And the whole idea here is to make the data useful to actuaries, underwriters, loss control engineers, your agents and your customer agents and your claims adjusters. So we have this device generated data, the sending and collection of that data, and then the analysis of that data. So we'll get into that a little bit at this point, and I'll show you some actual examples of what we're doing, and which you can actually do yourselves on site. So hopefully we want to take this data, which is data to the risk, related to the risk, and then data potentially from third parties who can provide some cleansing and structure to that data, which in turn can hopefully be used by your models and the insurance side for underwriting, pricing, rating, claims, to name a few areas here. So to this very important point, we've developed a variety of data tools from what we call Redshift for data lakes to tools like SageMaker, and kind of the word sounds like what it means, and sage being intelligent and wisdom. So what's more, these different systems may also have the same type of information, but it's labeled differently. For example, maybe in Italy or Europe, the term is cost per unit, whereas in North America, the US, we often think of cost per package. And then date formats are different. You start with the day, we start with the month, and there has to be a link between the two labels, so people that are doing the analysis on the data know that it refers to the same thing. So there's a lot of work to be done in that sense. And if you wanted to combine all this data in a traditional data warehouse without a data lake, it requires data preparation, export, transformation, and loading, typically what they known as ETL. And then you'd have to make trade-offs on what to keep and what to lose, what not to keep. And you may have to continually change the structure of a more rigid system. So data lakes allow you to import large amounts of data in any format because there's no predefined schema or format. You can even ingest data in real time. You can collect data from multiple sources, move it into the data lake in its original format, and then form those links as I mentioned before. So there's a lot to this, and it combines quite well with the IoT and world of telematics. Before I move on to maybe automotive and agriculture, I thought I would flip to what we're actually doing, and which is all public. Actually, most of this information is entirely public. So if you Google AWS and IoT and data lake, you're going to come up with so many different pages. There's probably nothing here that I'm showing that's anything proprietary. So if I can, I'm going to flip to, and Blas, help me out here. Are you seeing now a web page?
Yes, AWS Marketplace, yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to flip for a couple of minutes here to make this more live or non-PowerPoint, so to speak. You're probably getting all bored. You can do this in the side, but we have something called AWS Marketplace, And again, you can just go to the site, and it's a set of pages that builds a whole type of set of offerings, more commercial, more business to business. So there are a lot of categories. I'm just going to flip to the first category. And you can see that there's infrastructure software, and these often come from our partners, just like Amazon.com has, you can buy from third parties. The same thing, we've kind of incorporated the same model into our marketplace. So what I thought I'd do is, I couldn't possibly flip around to all these, but you can actually purchase applications in insurance if you wanted to. And potentially reinsurance applications. And some vendors now are looking at even core applications being purchased. There's a lot of reasons for that. No time to get into that today, but there are some business benefits both for the insurer and for the seller, obviously. So let me just flip into IoT, which we've been talking about. And in this area, you can see that actually we have a breakdown. It's a search engine here. It's a navigable search engine with preset filters. And I was just going to say, let's go back. Let's focus down here. There's a list: smart home and city. And so if you're interested in some of the things that Ritu was calling upon or discussing, you could find some of those third-party applications, devices, and other pieces within this. And I think module, for instance, is in the area of telematics. So they're one of our partners. You can find out more about that. You can get free trials here. You can do your purchasing on these. And so we have a lot of partners, just like we would at Amazon.com, that are offering this up through our AWS marketplace. And obviously we have major categories like IoT. So again, you guys can play around with that at your leisure. This is all public. I thought I'd take you over to the data product side here. And I wanted to show you, we call this the AWS, we call it the data exchange. And so you can find insurance data sets in here on risk and loss kinds of things. You can find, so a number of insurance vendors are posting their data sets for sale, which you then can use to download, apply into your underwriting and actuarial models if you like. Right at top, the first page you land at when you go into the data exchanges, we are putting up a lot of information on coronavirus and the COVID data hub. So you can pick up data sets revolved around that as an example. And then if you wanted to go into, say, automotive data, you can find out some of the things that we were just talking about in various aspects. So you could find out motor vehicle death rate by age and gender, and a whole bunch of, a whole listing, depends on what you're interested in. You can sort those or rearrange those by vendors or type. So I just thought I'd take you through the data exchange as part of the marketplace so that you can get, you can avail yourself of some of these data sets or other items. Does that make sense? Any questions so far on the marketplace or data exchange in relationship to what we're talking about in terms of IoT or other sensor devices?
I think we're good.
Okay. Let me move back to where we were in the Blas, can you see my screen again?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, so I was now going to talk a little bit about automotive. And I just put together this kind of first slide. There's a company called Celent. I talk to them quite frequently. They're one of the top global insurance analysts. They write reports on all types of things. They have done it on sensors and telematics. And one of the recent reports they were talking about, well, telematics and the automotive industry and what would occur first and have the greatest impact. And they kind of classified them in this direction, that telematics would have a shorter term impact, but but in terms of a total impact, kind of medium. Whereas when you get down to self-driving cars, it's going to take a lot longer to get to a point where we will have, in this case, what they classify as a very high impact. I'm only drawing attention to this is because I think Celent does, they've written some good reports in this area. So I thought I'd start out with that. Here is kind of our approach to connected vehicles. And just like Ritu was talking about in the property space and the sensors and that, we offer and maintain a growing system and group of services to offer to automotive manufacturers and customers all over the world. So it's in addition to, you know, online shopping and e-commerce, many of these customers take advantage of on-demand delivery of goods and food and streaming media. So, and Alexa with a hands-free personal assistant. So these are some of the areas that we're sharing and working with automobile manufacturers. And then, well, we leveraged our, you know, our internal expertise across the areas of data science and IoT, you know, to provide these to the, and we've actually incorporated a group of automotive industry veterans. Again, was not able to get that individual here, but yeah, I'll just share some additional thoughts around this. And one of those is this, what gave you the view of data lakes and how data lakes will take in your own data, third-party data, in any schema or format, and then allow for the massaging of that. And then, so if you look on the right side, it's almost like a process map. It's like a workflow of data, ingesting data from, say, fleet operations, and then transforming that, as I was talking about, in various ways, enriching the data, say with weather-related data, and then extracting the appropriate metadata. So, you know, you're probably familiar with the data of data, so to speak. So you want to relate it. You want to relate all this data, refine it to a specific point, and then apply certain algorithms. In our case, we do a lot of work. We have a whole set of tools around SageMaker. So I'm not going to get you into the specifics, but this is, you know, this advanced driver assistance systems program using an autonomous data lake. So with that, we do have this whole view of connected systems. And I think one of the things that we do quite well here is, if you just look on the left side of the page, we talk a lot about in AWS around well architected in down towards where the benefits are. And we actually will look at each solution, try to understand that solution, look at it deeply from 9 different points of view, understand if that's you know, secure and reliable as 2 of those points of view, and then give it a well-architected review, which then kind of gives you a stamp, almost a stamp of approval. It gives you kind of a credibility index. And that's related to the public cloud and all the security and reliability aspects. So this is how we take our own infrastructure and apply it to some of the pieces within the connected automobile. And then here is the, you know, kind of a solution platform. We think about location-based services, diagnostics, driver behavior, that whole approach to collecting the data. And we actually have created a platform for that so that automotive manufacturers can use that, and then the data can be derived, developed, analyzed, and pushed into these data sets, potentially that an actuary could use, or that an underwriter ultimately could use in pricing and rating from the insurance standpoint. And I think Ritu mentioned FreeRTOS, which is an MIT operating system for IoT, and we've been using that as a means to deploy that within the automotive area. And she mentioned a lot of this before, but same thing applies to auto essentially in our approach with Greengrass and IoT Core, and then embedding these devices within, helping our customers embed those devices into their autos. So I thought I'd just share this with you. This is public information, and this was AXA's view on pay-as-you-drive insurance solutions. I believe now that something like 50,000 customers are using this. It does require real-time data processing and analytics to generate a driver score, and then it depends on what we call serverless solutions, where you don't really have a computer designated for this, but it's an approach that we call at AWS, or a means to deploy real-time analytics in a sense without even designating one computer or one system against that. So kind of a serverless approach to that. So compute on demand. And that's what AXA's doing. And again, I believe this is all public. So there was we put all our user conference, which we call reInvent, on our site, and I believe you might be able to get a hold of that as well and take a look at it. A couple of other things. I thought I'd give some other examples. DeepMap is a Silicon Valley-based software startup. Solving localization and mapping, and it often needs to run a vast volume of image detections, generating a complete list of map features and road changes. So as it says, a few different things. Kia Motors doing deep recognition and advanced recognition and video analysis. The car automatically adjusts your seats and other assistance areas like mirrors and seats based upon the recognition of who you are. So I think that's interesting in and of itself. Mobileye, another advanced driver assistance system, relying on computer vision and complex networks. Again, focusing in our case on SageMaker, and in this case they were able to reduce core development using our RTOS and some of the other techniques from weeks to days. And Root Insurance, car insurance startup, also using SageMaker to do some of that pricing we were talking about, and insurance based upon how people drive. Analyzes telemetry from mobile phones, and according to them, you can save 52% on your car insurance. So I stopped there. That's a little bit of a few examples of what we're doing in auto, and I thought this might be a good stopping point, because I can also describe some things we're doing in agriculture and life science. But any questions so far?
So in terms of the investment and the IoT investment and when putting everything together, so how do you sort of convince the players, both on the insurance side and on the driver side, to actually go install all of this, have those IoT, and how do you sort of convince the resellers of that insurance to go and propagate that product when it might lead to the smaller premiums, so therefore smaller commission?
That's a question I think all of us in this group would probably have an opinion on, Blas. I'll put my insurance hat on, and it's been difficult to certainly volunteer or offer yourself up as as a telematics subscriber and get that reduced. There certainly in the U.S. I think Italy has been much more advanced, in terms of movement of the use of telematics and getting drivers to pay for usage-based insurance without feeling intruded upon. I think it depends culturally on countries. I mean, I look back in my history, I worked for a place called AT&T Bell Laboratories when I worked on the technical side. And back in 1948, they predicted that we would be using voice and screen, or voice and Zoom kinds of things back in 1948. It's taken 50 years for the culture to change. Now, given culture changes faster these days than it did in the 50s and 60s, the acceptance and use, I think, is still an issue. I was listening to the CEO of OnStar Insurance. OnStar is General Motors telematics and sensor, and they've been collecting data, petabytes of data for about a decade. So they may have the most richest, they may from an auto manufacturer, supposedly they have the richest data. And I was listening to them and they said, we're just beginning after 12 years to, get the acceptance rate up, at least in the United States. Again, I think Italy is, even in terms of Europe, is far advanced and more conditioned for usage-based insurance. So I think I think there's a cultural aspect of this, not just saving money on your insurance. But I would love to hear again from anyone else on this call, because we are talking. I've given you some U.S. data. I know what some of the faster trends are in Italy, but even slower trends in other parts of Europe. So I think it varies. Did I answer your question, boss?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm still a bit curious. Like, what is so you said that adoption of the telematics, and the question is that what actually drives people to adopt it? Because I mean, I understand if you are a subscriber, then yes, you want the smaller premium, and that's why you want to install it. But then at the same time, it's kind of thinks about the large investment and all of this. So it's kind of it's a little bit hard game to play, right? Because on the one side you have end consumers who want to pay less, and then you have the resellers who actually want to collect more premium because this is their higher commission. So the question is that how do we balance both?
I think we have a long way to go to convince, the world, and I think there's going to be different ways to do that. Safe driving, improving. I don't know about you, but I have 2 children who both drive in graduate school, so they're, so you're worried about them. One thing I particularly feel it was worthwhile when my son started driving was when my insurance company, which here in the U.S. is part of Allstate, and they have an advanced data and telematics approach. They inquired of me and they said, we can, and your son's premium is twice as much as you and your wife combined for 2 cars that are, for your 2 cars, meaning my wife and myself, that were a higher price than his car. So I said, well, geez, if you can reduce my my son's rate until it gets to be 25 by half, that reduces my entire premium. So sometimes it may be a family thing that can move this, helping get your children into safe driving programs, reducing their likelihood of getting into an accident. I think of all the loss control things that I did in the insurance world. And I think some of that can be some of the push, some of the incentives that we all can take advantage of.
Thank you.
So with that, I think we have about 20 24 minutes left to go.
Yes.
I thought I would, I'm just going to go through these last few slides quickly and leave maybe the last 20 minutes for questions by the group or discussion. I'm sure there's a lot smarter people in the world of insurance and specifically potentially telematics in Italy because you've been doing so much. Would love to hear your opinions. One of my passions is incorporating and applying risk financing techniques in the world of insurance to the food production of the world. And I would say insurance companies in general can have a great impact on that, whether it's small farms or large farms. And I just wanted to put up just a few slides of what we're doing in the world of AWS to promote that, more from a technological standpoint, but I think it has enormous ramifications in the food production. Italy adjoins Africa, which has obviously had many different issues over the decades. And if we can help small farmers properly risk finance, and get maybe the use of or develop the use of it's almost like a straight through processing of agricultural products from seeding and planting to the delivery production of the final foodstuff. If you can get sensors and IoTs in that. And by the way, while we're speaking of IoT and sensors, agriculture actually over the past 4 or 5 years has consumed about 2/3 of all the world's IoTs and sensors. So it's being used from everything from planning to weather to shipping to grain silos in a very efficient way. So we're talking about, commercial property buildings with Ritu, but clearly agriculture is in a way. And I know I was in Australia presenting this to a group of insurers. And in the US, we have a group of farm bureaus that are advancing themselves. They're actually Farm Bureau insurance companies. And there's about 30 of those. And they're very focused on improving the aspects of completing production, improving the use of weather-generated data from sensors to prevent or reduce the likelihood of spoilage or non-production. So I just thought I'd just walk through this quickly. We take at AWS a very, what I would call supply chain focus. And this is true for our manufacturing IoT, but it relates very much to agriculture. Again, I'm just going to run through this quickly so we have a little bit more time. Again, we have a complete kind of view of different technologies, data approaches, analytics, et cetera, to manage this process and to offer to our customers. And then I thought I would just, this is something that we had discussed at our user conference called reInvent. And there's about 1 billion people involved in small scale farming, and small scale farming produces about 70% of the world's food. Yet a lot of these folks live without internet. They're disconnected from each other. And so in the case of WeFarm, they want to ensure that, no matter where you are, what technology, you're able to connect. So WeFarm is a platform that brings together this small holder farming community. And I think there's about 1.9 million farmers, according to their stats, in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania that have already joined this platform. And the platform has collectively helped save literally hundreds of thousands of dollars when purchasing farm inputs by leveraging their combined buying power. So I think there's a lot of value to this, particularly as we've seen so much of the suffering in the world with third world countries and the lack of food production. And then lastly, I was just going to end up with one thing, and that is on the life sciences piece. Samsung is leading, and their SDS is their IT arm. And with cardiac arrhythmia, it's one of the leading heart diseases. Traditionally requires a doctor for diagnosis. And in this case, they have a patch that you can wear senses changes, and then it really can save up to multiple hours of both physicians and patients' time in getting better data about that arrhythmia. So I'll conclude that I have another one. I'll just skip this here. Let's go right to the discussions and any questions and answers. So I've done enough talking. Any thoughts, interest on any of these topics that you'd like to share, either in relationship to the technology or the insurance?
So maybe while our guests are getting ready, so maybe I will repeat the question, right? So when we're talking about that farm and connectivity and all of this, so let's say we are shipping some kind of the good from, I don't know, from Kenya or from South America to United States or to Europe, right? And then we need to ensure that the quality and the traceability is there. And then how can you actually insert those devices? How can you actually insert those platforms into those very sort of remote and very unsophisticated places to be actually part of your ecosystem?
Yeah, good question. And you need a company or you need a business like WeFarm, WEFARM, which is a business dedicated to the small farm community. And so, Blas, what I was saying on the adoption of IoT and sensors in agriculture, it's mostly been taken on by the big combines, as we call it, which are the big food manufacturers, developers, and producers. So the bird's eyes in the U.S. that produce tons and thousands of metric tons of frozen food. That's where most of the IoT devices. So we need more folks like, and I don't remember the gentleman's name who presented from WeFarm at our conference on this subject. So we need more of that to be moved. I know Amazon has also helped promote small risk financing and insurance in India for small farmers. I'm not sure how that progress has occurred, but you have millions of small farmers, and how do you get those devices? To some extent, the devices are going to have to be incorporated into the machinery and equipment. And so for at least mid-sized farms that say buy a John Deere tractor or a Kubota, the big, any of the big tractor manufacturers or food production manufacturers, the IoT and sensor devices are built into those. But can a small farm afford that? Not likely. So they might be dealing with IoT devices that are inexpensive, maybe even promoted and given away to the small farmer for planting, monitoring crops, weather, temperature, progress of crops. And that data then can be moved to a central, maybe even data set like the AWS marketplace or data exchange. And that then becomes freely diagnosed. Maybe we have a central free or low price diagnostic point for what I call the community farmers. That end of things has not been fully fleshed out, but again, businesses like WeFarm, I think, and it goes to the point of how do you move the devices into poorer countries, poorer developments, into low-cost devices, and I think that's just going to take time, effort, and commitment across the board, both by companies like Amazon, who are large and can afford that, but also plenty of companies like, hopefully will develop like WeFarm.
Okay, sounds good. We have a question from Gerardo. Please, Gerardo, go ahead. We unmute.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Ralph, for your presentation. And back into China, I read that Amazon started to distribute also motor insurance on its platform on India, sorry, not China. And hearing your presentation, I perceive that all these services are a kind of huge enabler for insurance companies in order to develop a brand new product directly B2C. So my question is, do you see also an integration concerning the distribution always on platform, Amazon platform, of course, like India is going on in India?
No, yeah, Gerardo, thank you. I think that, and I know that Amazon had a small insurance startup or helped some startups in India, and it was primarily to focus on those small communities where it's difficult to get insurance, say at a farm or a business within those small communities, whether it's in India or certainly Africa would apply here. I don't know if your question is more to the point of, will we start an insurance company? And that's not Amazon's aim. It's a different business model that we've been accustomed to. So we do want to promote the value to and provide risk financing, and that could be insurance. Certainly, that's a part of risk financing to the small communities of the world that don't have access to certain elements of insurance that will help them produce whatever they're producing. Small manufacturer, small business, an individual business like in India or Africa, maybe a woman-owned business that just can't get started. So we're trying to help promote that, but not being necessarily in the insurance business at all.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, and yeah, the question related is also if are you looking to provide distribution services to insurance companies? So me as a consumer, I can purchase my home insurance on Amazon, but the final product is issued by AXA or Generali or whatever.
Yeah, not so much. Same. I would provide the same answer, Gerardo, that we're not looking to do that. That's not something we've entertained at this point. That's, I think insurance, no matter what, is a different business, different accounting rules, different compliance rules, and we've kind of stayed away from that. I don't know if, I can't predict 2 years from now what we might do or help, a broker or an agent might be. You would think the next aspect might be something where we would help an agent promote themselves to because they resell. If you look at Amazon.com, half of what is sold out there is in a reseller model with third-party partners. So it could be applied to insurance, but again, we have not moved in that direction whatsoever. There's no conversations going on that I know of internally to do that. So it's not something I see in the immediate.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. What we'd like to do is promote exactly what we're doing, helping the small communities of the world, the potentially underserved, businesses, farms, to help them and help the partners that we're promoting, like We Farm, to help them build a better environment. And maybe then the insurance companies will have better facilities to offer smaller micro insurance-based coverages for these small businesses, for a small farm in Kenya or a small farm in India. And I think I think we owe that to I think we all owe that to helping our world improve.
Perfect, thank you. And we have another question. In how much time do you foresee a full shift from risk transfer to risk prevention, given IoT data lakes and any other technology, if it is ever fully happen?
So, Blas, are we talking, and maybe the person can help me, are we talking about the evolution of the data piece within the construct of insurance and IoT, or either?
I'm more referring to the fact that, with the usage of data, you can basically almost transform, right, the insurance model into a full risk prevention versus risk transfer. And so, actually the amount of balance sheet tied to risk and paying out claims will probably shrink more towards probably a business model tied to risk prevention, right?
Yeah, so I follow you, and I'll put my insurance hat on here. Um, 2 decades ago, they predicted that the internet would remove agents and brokers from the world of insurance. Uh, I haven't seen that happen. I may go back and be a broker after this and get my broker's license again. So I think you're absolutely right, though. We should be doing risk reduction. That improves whether it's an injury on the job, which costs the world in global economic terms $3 trillion and a lot of suffering. So if we can help, and I did some loss control in my underwriting days. If we can help a manufacturer reduce the number of injuries, isn't that helping someone not suffer, go to the hospital, reduce our costs in healthcare, get a better environment so they're not suffering at the end of their lives? Yeah, I think insurance has to step up to the bar to do some of that. And if that means that their profit or their margins may go down. But I tell you what, when I was doing underwriting, and I'm going to put this back to you, Francesco, um, I would underwrite a bad risk if I could price it right and I could loss control it over 3 years and say, gee, if that losses comes down, that risk is still being priced on a 3-year average basis. So I'm making money while they're improving their loss ratio or their losses, and I'm helping them improve lowering their cost of injury, lowering their automobile losses if they're a shipper. So I'm making more money. Now, in the long run, will that change the economics of the insurance industry? I don't know, but we should be thinking about doing positive things in the industry, which may result in finding new areas of insurance. And it might be real-time insurance. So we could real-time price agricultural insurance. That's what we're doing with usage-based insurance with automotive. Why not apply that to some other things? Open up new markets for the insurance industry while improving risk management, like you're saying.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
I get, by the way, I'm fairly opinionated, Francesco. So I believe we need to do positive things with our financing as well as our loss control and engineering.
Yes.
Insurance has had a bad rap for too many years. So.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and it's actually it's really interesting, right? It almost comes down to the sort of the finance game, right? It doesn't really matter if it's expensive or cheap. It means that it's undervalued or overvalued or properly valued, right? So I think that this is one of the most important parts, is that do you have enough data to actually see and identify your risks and how can you actually mitigate them?
Yeah, and I think, the data will allow us to better price it and rate it and risk control it, loss control it. And then we'll just become smarter as an industry about our risks. You can always price a bit, you can make money on a bad risk. Of course, you may have to charge them the price of the policy, so to speak, whatever the limits are. But if you loss control it, you reduce the risk quotient, and then we still haven't really gotten the benefits of a catastrophe modeling. And look at the change in climate right now. I think we're going through a massive change. We're still going to be dealing with major catastrophe risks, new risks that are coming up, particularly in the world of environmental and climate control, that are going to cause flooding damage. It's going to cause change in temperature damage. It may cause change in travel damage, which then relates to how insurance is priced and rated. So I think there's just a lot of change in the world that is going to go on. The data being used intelligently by the insurance industry will only allow us to do a lot of new things better.
Sounds good. Perfect. All right. I think that this will be all the questions that we have for you, Ralph.
Well, Blas, thank you. And thank you for everyone attending. Again, I can be a little bit opinionated when I think of technology, data, and insurance and what we should be doing. So I would love to get back to Italy again. Look forward to getting a decent Italian meal. Not to say, and certainly where I'm at right now, that's hard to come by. So I envy all my Italian counterparts. And I wish you all the best in the world of insurance and whatever you're doing in terms of COVID over the next few months.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ralph. Please enjoy the wonderful spring weather that we suddenly have. So thanks so much. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Blas.